Welcome. Okay, it is August 9th, Tuesday, episode 3, season 1. We are here at the Northeast Cannabis Podcast. I am Jake Robinson. We are here with a pillar of the upcoming legalized East Coast legalization movement, cannabis media, upstart, mom and pop that are crushing some of the biggest names out there, a media partner with all the good people at RMR, you name it, they're in it. What's up, my dude? Dan, how you doing?
Hey Jake, thank you. That's a very good, kind introduction. I like that.
Only the truth here. So you're at Heady NJ. Start off for anyone uninformed, which I doubt there's many. What is Heady NJ about? What are we doing over there?
Yeah, so we're an independent news site, covering New Jersey legalization as it's been unfolding, covering the political movements of it, and now the market, as we get closer to a market, an adult use market, as we're making steps bit by bit. That way, almost 300 licensed adult use cannabis businesses right now. We just got to get them open.
Yeah, man. And so New Jersey and New York, really, the tri-state cannabis is close to my heart. Just on my own. So this is a question that starts with a little bit of a background here. So my thing with cannabis was always I watched the shit show, for lack of a better term, that was Prop 215. Well, the glory days that were Prop 215, and then the shit show that followed post Prop 64. So my thought has always been, can we on the East Coast actually learn from the mistakes of legalization, whether that is legislative failure, whether that is overtaxation, whether it's the myriad issues? Can we potentially, this is kind of what my hope is, uh, do you think, what's your take on, do we have the ability to not fall into those same traps?
Absolutely. I think New Jersey definitely learned these lessons. And there was a lot of talk of this, once our referendum passed by 67%, looking at the other markets to see what might be the problem. So one of the things we did do is we do have a very competitive tax rate. I don't think it'll be above 8% and much, because I think it's about or it might be like an 8.5, because I think it's about like a 6.2, and then for the state tax, and then the 2% local tax. So something very competitive that way, even better than New York that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of big issues, like the idea of barrier to entry, that our medical program started under Chris Christie and was one of the worst, one of the oldest and one of the worst. Unfortunately, inspired too many people. And lasted far too long under here. Under our governor Phil Murphy, we've expanded things. We have 26 medical cannabis dispensaries, open right now in New Jersey, after having only five or so for the longest time. So, making more progress on that. So we're happy
Yeah.
about that.
No, that's exciting. And I want to call out to the viewers that and make this very clear. New Jersey and New York are often um, looped into the same, they're thought of in very much the same way. With cannabis, it's far from the truth, at least right now. So people, just out of not knowing, will innately say, "Oh yeah, so the legalization and the stuff that's going on in the market in New Jersey and New York." Well, they're two different beasts. So is it all right if I potentially ask you a few questions that um, certain people might not enjoy the answer to?
Well, yeah, you can definitely ask me what you'd like to.
We won't get
I'm
into
also the
specifics.
challenging
What I
things.
see is this. This is one thing, and I rarely get to talk to someone who doesn't just cover the New Jersey cannabis space, but somebody who, uh, well, everyone tries to cover it, but someone who actually knows what happened, who knows how it's been the past few years, etc. Tell me I am overreacting or I am thinking the worst if I am concerned about, as great as we're making things seem, what I'm wondering is how do we um, how do we reconcile the concept of forced social equity and priority licenses for groups of people and all of the things that we all really agree on, like when it's done properly. people impacted by the war on drugs, who wasn't? But I understand all of that. But what I'm asking is this: New Jersey has seemingly done a very good job of grandfathering in existing medical licensed MSOs. So when I say that, it's not to say I'm suggesting there's some sort of collusion, although I am. I guess I mean the barriers to entry seem extremely hard in reality.
Right, so we do still have barriers to entry. Like there is prioritization for like minorities, for people that had like two misdemeanors or a felony, for example, people operating in certain neighborhoods that have been most impacted. But right, it's still a question of money. It really is a question of capital then, and then it's a question then of finding like land in the location. And so the
Correct.
NJCRC says they want to work on this, but it's one of those things that like lounges and edibles. It's like forthcoming, and it's been forthcoming.
So well said. And I mean, here's my thought though, and why. I'm sorry if I was unclear there. What I meant to say is that I believe in equity. I believe in giving priority to everything that we all agree on that should happen in cannabis. What I'm getting at kind of is, because I've been so involved in East Coast, New York, New Jersey cannabis for the past 6 years. I've aged 60 years in 6 years, and I will tell you, man, that like. I'm a little bit worried that New Jersey will be this 26 mega growed scenario. Like, I don't believe that the zoning, the $200 million price tag, the fact that you have to own your land in order to get your provisional, I think these are all really reminiscent of Prop 64, of all the little caveats that came out, And so, what good is it? I'm asking you, from your opinion, do you believe that there's really a value in saying, oh, yeah, of course we give priority to those who have been impacted by the drug war unfairly, but you still have to have $150 million?
Well, I don't know if you need $150 million. That's very extreme, Jake.
Well, just for one of the 26 licenses that you have
Right.
brought
No,
up.
we're not going to have just like 26 licenses. We're going to have, right. So we only have 26 right now. That's the thing. It's like the 26 now is a Christie era lingering. We still have the
The
Murphy
follow. Okay,
era.
now I
So that's
follow.
the thing is like we've had the Governor Phil Murphy came in after Chris Christie and has appointed Diana Wayne, who was the leader of the advocacy legalization movement prior to being CRC NJ Cannabis Regulatory Chair. So there's a lot of faith in Diana that like these things will work out. It's just taking forever and a
That
day.
makes much
We've
more
definitely
sense.
had that thing where we are trying to license more companies and not
Yeah.
have like a limited market because right, the limited market is what's awful. That's what you're saying about right. Like it is awful that we have such like a limited adult use market right now. It is like a thing. I want to buy. I know a lot of people that want a license, and a couple of people are winning. Right. So I have like some people, some friends, that are winning. So it is a question of seeing how prepared are they to then do like we have the conditional license was a great innovation too, where it's a two-part license, so you didn't have to have all the
Please
money and
expand
all
on
the
that.
land
Actually,
locked up.
I would love for you to tell the people a little bit more about why those conditions, what they are, the conditionals, and why they help.
Right, right. So this is right. New Jersey CRC is like interesting innovation where you have like a two-part application. Where so the first part you don't need a location set down, and you can say you don't need all the money lined up then. So that frees you then, and then you get if you've won. Now we've had some people win. We're getting 6 months to then find the money and find the location. So if
Which
you
is
have like if you
much
say I have half a license to like investors, you like and you're a charming guy who's got like his numbers. Numbers are a hell of a thing, but they're not impossible that way. I'm learning that bit by bit.
I'm glad you said that, people, because watch out for pitch deck robbery. It happens often in this business. That's at least what I call it, for sure. And, the other end of things, too, which I like to always draw, I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I'm not sure. You grew up in the tri state?
I did grow up in New Jersey, born and raised here. Third
So,
generation mother's side, left for a little back here.
so you have a connection, same way I do, to your, area. And I just would hate to see, like, it breaks my heart to like understand and work in Cali cannabis and work with some of these companies and brands and to understand, what a tragedy and what a shit show it all is for no reason more than originally legislative greed and the lack of foresight, if that maybe. So when I see and talk to people like you, and like I get very hopeful that we have opportunities to not do it in these same ways and not ruin it before it starts. Like that would really just be the absolute killer, I think. So with the uh, I have another hypothesis that I want you to speak on. This is not this is just an educated guess. For those of the everyone doesn't know, New Jersey is the garden state, right? You know, they
So they
grow
say.
all of the food for most of the food for New York. It doesn't the food that doesn't come from California does come it goes to New York City, does come from New Jersey. I mean, let's be real. It is a reality. So I just have this feeling that it might even be a better model if maybe New Jersey was. I mean, New York will be the head. It will be they always were. If New York moves, the world moves. It's the financial capital of the world. It will be the cannabis capital of the world. But I am thinking about maybe it shouldn't be the cultivation capital. Maybe that should fall from a tri-state perspective to New Jersey. And I understand that brings up a lot of issues with why these old fucks won't just legalize it already. But from an interstate commerce perspective. But do you think? I mean, I think that's interesting, and I think it could avoid a lot of the potential environmental and environmental racism issues that people are already starting to think will occur, which I do as well.
Yeah, so we definitely could have, like warehouses, like the traditional, like East Coast way of growing, like in a warehouse, you can have that. We could have greenhouses is interesting, is another idea. For example, to have that. We do have like a good amount of people in South Jersey that want that. But right, the whole idea is interstate commerce. That begs the question of federal legalization. Then that begs the question of like what's going to happen, what's coming from California and Portland, then competing with our local guys and saying who's going to survive.
Yeah, and we're talking about an international market, really, because
Right, that's another sort of legalization.
therein is
Right, that's going to further change things. Right, but that's world commerce. That's like a little.
well, believe
Right,
it
I
this
think
way,
federal is a little bit first.
my hypothesis is that the only reason that it makes any sense why we have had 5 to 6 bills a year put up by Dems and Republicans, doesn't matter, always to be shot down, like designed to fail for the past 5 to 6 years roughly. These always come up and they always get shot down. There's always a little bit of false hope. I believe that that's what they're waiting for, meaning I don't think they give a flying F about the money that can be generated through interstate commerce. I believe they care about being the number one. The United States sees the financial potential to be the number one exporter of cannabis across the world. So the only way that opens up is through interstate commerce. Interstate commerce opens up, international has just opened up. Boom, it's done. So I just mean like, I like to kind of do the 4D chess a little bit to help all the people on the ground, the most deserving ones, type of thing, the people who actually like growing weed, have have an affinity for it and providing the best products. And, it's a stacked deck in a lot of cases.
Well, that's a question of like the nature of cultivation specifically, and like you always have growing conditions. Dictate a lot of times like where is the best product going to come from. There is Long Island wine. You could buy Long Island wine, but do you want the Nassau County wine, or do you want Sonoma County wine outside into San Francisco?
And
Those
if
like
you're talking about greenhouse or in the soil, you certainly want to focus on terroir. Definitely. I can agree with that.
right. So that's like an interesting thing about like the nature of cultivation. Manufacturing, differs. Depends on who has like the best product and who can make the most innovative product and innovation that way, and like who can market and like survive with capital and whatnot. Because then there's like so many other like questions there, say like what's gonna happen or like who's gonna buy what or like the nature of that. Because we understand we didn't want vertical integration. Yet there's an assumption that like a lot of people like the idea of making a thing and then selling a thing, or growing a thing, making a thing, selling a thing, because that's what kind of people naturally do with things. So we'll see what happens with that. It's like there's a lot of like unsolved questions right now. I'm just trying to get through get this expanded market off the ground. Then we can play with all of this like XYZ
No, well
international.
said, dude. No, well said. And that's on me. It's sort of like I stay up at night, like machinating on these different. So, but you're 100%. Because it's just what I love. It's what I do. And but you're absolutely right. It's at the end of the day, it's a amazing step forward. And to me, it still blows my mind that the same cities that we grew up in. Where? How old are you?
I'm 35. Yeah.
31, so same boat. You remember? I know people who literally don't remember when weed was illegal. That like there are 21-year-olds who have no recollection of when cannabis was ever illegal, when they couldn't smoke a joint
Right,
without.
there's always going to be like that generation that then benefits from like the generational struggle. So then, like the children of like unionized like labor members, the children of civil rights protesters. That way, children raised by gay parents, to where that's the norm. For example, right? It is a sea change, like a tantamount to those changes because it is like trying to eventually, like right, the people that won't remember it. I'm old enough. I know people there's a right. People don't, not everyone remembers 9/11. If you were like 21 years ago, you're 26 years old right now or
It's
so. Right. And
fascinating
this is
you
like a
brought that
visceral
up.
image in my head and like many others. Right. So, but like now I'm older. It's going to be like Pearl Harbor. Right.
There we
It's
go.
gonna be like Pearl Harbor back in the day. It's just like the nature of like the passage of time. Right. So now we have like, integration in society, black members, we're, I myself am half Peruvian. That's, I might even find this pales the days long that way. So like, I understand these like issues of like race and, whatnot in class and like the need to create like a class of Hispanic, business people and get that going. So yeah, it's really excited times. And yeah, it's like an interesting thing to see like what people would be like after that. Yeah. After the first class. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like what you said really hits hard because it's what I like to always remind people is because things can get a little daunting in cannabis is this is the most exciting time in the world for right now. Like in the sense of those things you just mentioned, I mean, those were generational sea changes in culture. And there's no question that that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And that is exciting. And of course, it's not going to be done perfectly. And of course, there are going to be people who do things wrong by accident, people who know they're not doing the right, this is just life. But so you're absolutely right. And it is, it's an exciting time. It's exciting to think that in, 40 years, I'll be saying, let's see, I'm 30, it's 50, maybe. Hey, Johnny, I remember when I had to run from the
Yes.
bullets and,
In my day, we got weed from a stranger, and it was
yeah,
very awkward.
15 miles and we bought it in a clear plastic bag.
And we liked it. We liked our mediocre weed and our mediocre bags.
Oh man, no, it's amazing. It's true, and it really goes to show that. I mean, my father's 70, he just turned 70 this year. My mom as well, and lifelong cannabis users. My father's also retired New York City firefighter,
Oh
and
shit!
it's like the way that crosses the cannabis just crosses boundaries, like just
Right?
crosses
Yeah.
all that. I mean, that's the really exciting part. The part where my mom can now brag to her friends about what I do as opposed to like think I'm a trafficker. So that's a nice change, and I just mean you know what I mean. You can elaborate that to other things. Just don't ever tell your bank teller. I've made
You
that
know,
mistake. But
the teller can tell. I'll tell her I'm a political journalist and entrepreneur. Just know the
oh
niche.
yeah, if they're asking, you got a problem. But yeah, so okay, well that brings me to kind of a more feasible end of the conversation, which is like I always like to get these out. Um, what's your advice to people? So twofold question. First, specifically, if you're in New Jersey or the tri-state and you are interested in not just interested in cannabis industry, if you are someone who's been following the CRC's rulings, has been reading the regs, and who is knows they want to be in a direction, whether it's a delivery, whether it's a lab, whether it's a grow, whatever. What would you say to them right now?
Read HeadyNJ.com for the latest news about New Jersey cannabis.
I honestly think that's good advice, frankly. And so now more globally, right? What will little bigger, what would you say? Because it's the top question I get always is, oh my God, I want to work in cannabis. How do I do that? It's so hard to enter
Right,
the
that
industry.
is like an interesting question. So like a lot of people say is like, well, there's a couple of things. First, like you should do like what you're best at and just add cannabis. So I was a political journalist and now I'm a cannabis journalist. For example, if you're in marketing, you can market cannabis that way and really play to like your strengths. So that way, and then figure out what's good at what you like the most. Passion will get you through like some bad days or days where you have like an eye opener about the need for things, and network with the industry. There's a lot of good people about here. There's a lot of a lot of friendly people, and sometimes it takes a village to get like a small business off the ground.
Oh yeah, and that's amazing advice. And I tell people something very similar, which is I say, how do you work in cannabis? How do you not work in cannabis? Meaning, whether I don't care if repair tractor engines or fertigation systems, or you're an HVAC tech, or you're an author, or you're a photographer, or a graphic design, just put the word cannabis near it, and there's a need, there's a niche. I mean, like, whether it's my boys over at Flour Mill, like just fucking tooling out a great ancillary product. It's like I do always like to drive home to people that, and I'll do this a lot editorially, which is why my lists and stuff when I'm writing is never like a top 10 flower list or something where it's just, oh, you mean 10 elite strains that I can't even buy, and neither can none of these readers can buy, let alone find. So what I feel it does when we talk only about, we profile growers and flower only, and that's one reason I'm so excited to be doing this RMR with all of these great media partners, is because it gives the false impression that cultivation is the only avenue for this industry. And
Right,
I
there's
would
so many
say
things to
cultivation
do.
is a small avenue. I mean, we need everyone in cannabis. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Who do you want to hire? Someone who has experience in doing what they do, but not in weed, but they love weed. Chances are you'll do pretty well. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's hard for people though, I think.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, it
know.
is hard that way. No, there's definitely like ways to get in. It depends, like, right, what you're best at. There's definitely, there's you don't even have to be, plant touching. You can be an ancillary, where you're like working with a cannabis company or working with other companies and the thing. There's always CBD and hemp. That's like a big thing. It's the restrictions aren't so much, in there's different areas that way. But right, it really one should always like play to your strengths. Try to read about the industry, whatnot, learn any things, network. So right, it's a great opportunity to come in. It is like a crazy like change, massive change in society, like computers and like civil rights almost combined that way. Nobody had to legalize computers.
Well put. You're right. Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, you think about it from that perspective, and it's like even going to the moon. What an incredible technological advantage, or movement that was, and it was the same tech that ran a Sega Genesis. So imagine how amazing that is. But imagine having to add on to legalizing space type thing. I mean, so we have these sort of double difficulties to work through. But that's what I think separates the wheat from the chaff, in this industry at least. I think it's like what you said very well just now, which is that the passion will get you through those hard days. And there's plenty of days where I want to rip my head off, but there's never a day where I'm like, I'm never smoking weed again. So, and that said, it's an important part of my life, and I think that it goes back to passion. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, or you know
Something like that.
as they say. But that's great. So tell me just a little bit about the operation you got going on. How old is Heady NJ? What are you generally focusing on? Where can people find you? All that.
Yes, my partner publisher here, DK Nug, started us up in end of 2017, 2018 with Governor Murphy, winning in the beginning of the legalization. I came on, made a deal to become editor October 2019, and have been, building it steadily, brick by brick. since, covering, legalization, covering the now CRC, as they make regulations and like licensed companies, covering the companies, covering home grow is the big thing we don't have in New Jersey. We're
But we
fighting
got it in
Smith
New
and
York,
Wesson.
baby, for now. I'm
Right, it's
excited.
really difficult. Right, yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
But even there was an interesting provision. Like, doesn't it have to be like a year and a half after the industry or something?
Oh, for the home grow?
Yeah, or
No, no. So, in fact, that's where the effery comes in my opinion, is that all of the existing MSOs for all the existing medical license holders are allowed to go vertical immediately, of course, and then you're barred for 2 years any new cultivation licenses. So, to me, when I read the 170-page reg, all that says in very plain English is, yeah, we're gonna, of course, grandfather these businesses that have been paying us money for a few years into being vertical, and you can't do that for 2 years so that they can get a leg up on you real quick. Like that's
oh
that
wow,
that.
well, it's a New York thing. I'm Jersey cannabis
No, that's a
over here.
Jersey thing. No, no, no. So that's a Jersey thing. So
Oh
the New
no,
York,
wait. So wait. So like that's almost expired though. Like that shit started. It's almost expired. It expires in February. Like it.
they're
Like that's
not
it
going
was 30. It
vertical.
was 37 cultivators,
Yeah.
large scale cultivators. So right. So they weren't all automatically grandfathered in either. But right, they were the
No,
first ones
no,
in.
they weren't.
But like
Just the
right, it's almost over. Like it was like great because it was 21 to 22 and now it's 22 to 23. So it's February 23. That's over. We like our program has been going
Dan,
slow.
I'm
So
not
but right.
suggesting that it's still going on. I'm using an example as someone who's been doing this for 6 years, right?
No, fair enough.
So what I mean is like, sure, it is not the case now, but it's what I lived through for the past three, and it was an annoying piece. But so with the New York thing, just to clarify for everyone who wants to, exercise their right in New York, um, the initial public comment or the initial rule, this potential decision was home grow is going to be legal for 6 plants per adult per living space, cap of 2 people, so cap of 12 plants. Um, Originally, it was until the first licenses are granted, until the first doors are open. And that got pushed back during public comment to when the first licenses are granted. And then during public comment, the third time, that was changed to 60 days. If everyone's cool with this for 60 days, you can start home grow. So essentially, that was just because everyone was doing it anyway. But 60 days went by. In fact, 72 days went by before I bothered to log on. And of course, they didn't promote it and say, hey, by the way, you can home grow now. But if you go in and look and say, oh, look, that did expire. Looks like I can have my plants. So what I'm getting at is I never can understand from a regulatory body if I want to put on my blinders and say every regulator has our best interests in mind 100% of the time, then I can never understand why home grow would ever be not allowed. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like saying, like, I mean, do you feel the same way? Do you feel there's a negative to home grow potentially
No,
from an
I don't
industry?
feel this is like a negative to home grow. The Jersey regulators have made it very clear they do not have jurisdiction over that issue.
Yeah, right. No, they backed off it, right?
They don't. They literally do not have the power. They do not have the power to institute it. It has to be done through the legislature. That has been made clear. So it's not like we have to
CRC.
have the onus on the CRC. It's the onus still on the legislature and state senators that aren't getting lobbied enough. We only have like a modest movement that wants home grow versus even a socially just industry. There's certain people that want lots of businesses. Their whole thing is not home grow, home grow, home grow every day.
No, no, no. Yeah, you're
That's
right.
like that is an issue one way or another. Like it's one thing if you only have like a certain amount of the people that really want home grow versus I want XYZ and then I want home grow.
And then what you said right there is really the nail on the head. Is you know it's all about business, and of course I'm not going to be for, yes, 100%. It's all about control. But so clarify for me, because I don't know this. The individuals who can make said decisions on that are not the CRC, you're saying. Like at the end
Right.
of the day, who is going to be able to make that final call for
Right,
whether.
it's a bill that has to pass the legislature, the state senate, the assembly. We have introduced versions. We have, state senator. Shout out to state senator Vingo Paul, good guy. Troy Singleton, good guy. The leading the charge there. They have introduced bills respectively for adult use and medical home grow, and do have college sponsors. Oh yeah, my own hometown state senator Pat Dignan. He's sponsor of the bill too. So some good people. So, but right, it's like just like another fight in the legislature that is though very uphill. For example, when like a lot of the energy is focused on the licensed businesses.
Yes, and the part to me that gets me is the argument against home grow can never be phrased by the individuals that you had, not mentioned by name, but the ones who are industry forward and don't want it. There can never be a valid argument made beyond we don't want people growing product that we can sell. So I think this is always a problem, cannabis aside. When money becomes a financial reality, when sorry, let me rephrase. When being well funded and by the right people is a political reality, we're always going to run into issues that don't necessarily behoove the common person.
Right, you can make that argument about homegrown. Many have done it, and it is an issue.
Meaning you can't really make an argument that it is a bad, wet thing in any way.
It's also just it's just like difficult to advocate to people if they're like, because then there was like other controversies over cannabis that's still like inflaming people about like location. That's like a big thing. It kept being near like a college. It said that like
correct.
St. Peter's University, this eighth place college in March Madness, is now like fighting that it's suing now Medusa Dispensary Lounge that got like local approval and state approval. Well, they got 2/3 of the local approval, and they got all the state approval, the first part of their conditional license done there. Good guy there named Haytham. So that's like a really big fight now. You thought you had it waiting for the city council, but now there's a lawsuit, brought by this potentially, political, powerful entity, of like a Catholic college that like thinks it's famous now because of a basketball game.
Interesting example there.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. And I believe that your acumen from the political, science and the political journalism world, I think really is a godsend for people like us because I think you have an insight into things that people like me literally do every day. But I mean, I have an attorney and I have a this and a that, so it's like you said, being able to take what you've done well, what your skill set, lean into it and apply it. It's really it's quite enlightening. Speaking to you on this topic specifically, let me see if I can remember this linchpin question. It was a killer. That's the problem with you. You're too good. I keep having the questions and then I have another one.
Yeah, write it down, Mike.
I know, right? So I'm trying to roll this joint. But so I really like everything you're saying, and I'm excited for somebody like you to really be a representative. And I say that, I mean, we're all reps. I mean, I tell people who I work with, like I tell people I sell weed to. I'm like, you're boots on the ground now. Like you are first line education. You are like, meaning like you can think that's what we all are at this point. We are all, it's up to all of us to destigmatize, to we're uphill battle. We got 100 years of prohibition ahead, in front. Like that's coming a long way. There's generations that will not ever have that cognitive change, kind of like we were alluding to earlier, and that will be something generational. But man, it's hella exciting to be living it all for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Right. Yeah, it is like a great change. Right. We need to keep it changed that way to keep all these like good possibilities going. There's so much innovation that's possible, like in cannabis. Like it does so much, even like the hemp side. It's not as fun the hemp side, but
No,
it's
for
still
sure.
really
From a
good.
biofuels and saving the environment, God forbid, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree. It is exciting stuff. It's all exciting, and I'm so glad, really, to have such a variety of people, covering it. So, would you maybe tell us a little bit about the event you had just mentioned beforehand?
Yeah, yeah. So September 25th, Sunday, we're having our New Jersey cannabis policy discussion. we're going to be in South Hackensack, New Jersey, near the George Washington Bridge. It's at Ambassador Studios. It's a consumption-friendly place. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to having this gathering of like-minded individuals, having some good times, like learning something. And yeah, we have our we're panel. I'll be moderating the panel. We're gonna be discussing and having the 2022 cannabis license winners. So we've confirmed 3 people. So we have Hatham Elgway is going to be dispensary guy of Medusa Dispensary Lounge in Jersey City. We have Tara Masu Sargente of Asbury Park, representing micro manufacturing. Now we have Tom Anderson of Tom Armstrong, latest guy. Tom Armstrong represents cultivation and has a license in Franklin Township, New Jersey. So yeah, it should be a good time.
That's awesome, man. Is there a link or something like that for the other people? And send me an email for sure with the info, 'cause I'm there. But can people who maybe didn't catch that, can they find it on your IG?
Yeah, they should be able to find it on our IG, a link in bio.
Good. Link
There,
in bio.
yeah.
Awesome.
So we're doing that there. Yeah, it's on Eventbrite. That way, if you look for Heady NJ too.
And that's
And I would
Heady
definitely send that
that's
to you.
Heady_NJ. Yeah, right?
Yeah, we're Heady_NJ on Twitter and Instagram. That way, in this modern era.
Yeah. All right. So, and I gotta ask too, because you're mentioning townships. So people might not know that, and correct me if this was a while ago. From what I understood, we were in a scenario where there was a certain amount of townships, municipalities in the state of New Jersey, which voted on whether or not they would allow cultivation and retail, and they could choose. It's like if they opted in, they had to go with it, but if they opted out, they were given the opportunity to opt in later. Correct, something like that. Either way, so the question is, uh, I remember that it was that the CRC it had been said that the CRC would be hearing in each individual township would be taking the recommendations, not taking them verbatim, but would be that the CRC would end up taking the recommendations of the individual township's best applicants. Is that accurate?
Right. So you kind of the towns are really supposed to decide like who has like approval on the local level. The towns in New Jersey have a lot of power. They have a lot of power. If they don't want cannabis in their town, they don't want it. But right. So we've had like a really haphazard process. Unfortunately, they kind of wanted like we've had so many delays. They kind of like made it that you need to have like implemented it by now, or you have to ban it. So a lot of towns banned it because the CRC's guidance regulations were not out
Well,
yet.
not out yet,
So
exactly.
right, so that was a process, and there wasn't really like a model ordinance where you could turn to like the organization where like I was part of like the legalization coalition, but we did not have like on the state level, but we did not have like a model town ordinance. So that's been like a really big issue, right? And we've been like looking forward to find like the best town, and it's been like a great process. Like it's really difficult because you had like Newark had like lowered the barriers to entry in their ordinance, but then had a like 1 month, 30 day like window of like application last December. So like that's the whole program. So to hear Johnson won Ewing, he had to apply to Ewing before he could apply for his state license. So the whole process has
Exactly. That's
been like
what I
really
was
like a
getting at.
haphazard process. And right, like a lot of the towns did opt in. That's changing, but like it's also like the lack of a strong legalization movement in every single town, makes it very difficult.
And that is something that just always reminds me of California. Whenever things
Right,
start.
yeah, we have the same issue. California is like the blue state, but it's like a lot of the town. It's like LA, like San Francisco and the counties like around that. San Diego, you got the suburbs, but then you've got like a lot of that land. A lot of those towns are rural places are Republican. We get a lot of that too here, yeah.
No, absolutely. New Jersey is a right to farm state, and people often, New Jersey is blue, sure, but people really, kind of forget that gubernatorially they tend to actually be conservative from a voter perspective, at least from what I remember. But more importantly, is this the township I'm referring to? I'm trying to remember which license I was on.
You should.
It was, oh, dude, well, I blocked it out. I did my job and moved on. But so let's see, it was Hopewell.
Okay.
Have they granted there yet?
I can't say I've been following Hopewell.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
So that's the other thing. There's like so many towns, like it's very hard to like follow that much. Like I'm following like Hudson County the most because like I also cover Hudson County politics for my other moonlighting hustle there. So like that's been interesting. Like Jersey City, I've been really following, and like Hoboken too. But Hoboken, they had one dispensary like got a location in a very strange way, and then like the whole town turned against it. It's
Hmm.
really difficult seeing like Hoboken go from having like an expansive ordinance to like now it's like six.
Yeah.
So I feel like all these like NIMBY Karens came out against them.
No, for sure, exactly. And the ones who are hitting their own vape pens, I'm sure, with their bottle of wine. But so the reason I brought up Hopewell and these surrounding towns is I have been logging on, and I think other people have too, following who's getting these licenses. But the nature of the beast in terms of holdings companies is makes it very difficult to actually follow the train of like, is this the license I worked on? Meaning, you know what I mean? Like, it's very hard to, there's 18 holdings companies involved in one fucking license. So that's, it's not super unheard of either. But what I'm wondering is, we have any sense when New Jersey will be at a point where they're going to say, all right, guys, we've done it. We're here. We're ready. I mean, no, this is like a very pie in the sky thought, but what year do you foresee the East Coast having a functional cannabis economy?
Right, so that's an interesting question about the nature of functional. So it already opened, but like it's limited now. I'm expecting like people this year, like by the end of like next year, I'm expecting people to start opening next year in 2023. And 2024 is when we really start having fun, and we're gonna have like a bigger market, right? Every year, like it grows. 2025 is gonna be even thicker with all the towns, all the people that have gone through the process, like getting through that way, and ideally, figuring out these problems with like more towns signing on and figuring out like how to get like capital to some of the small guys. It's a big issue for any company. They need
Mhm.
like $1 million. I only need 300,000. It can still be difficult to get both.
Yes, no, absolutely. And more townships can and do continue to sign on, right? And so that's I was just sort of wondering how far along are we, like, meaning are most of the licenses granted?
Well, that's an interesting question then, because there is no state cap in New Jersey, so it's
That's what
almost
I.
going to be a natural. The cap is really the land is the town cap, and like that's really hard to aggregate to say how many towns or how many licenses are open there. There is a certain number there. We will see how many that is, and but then that's always changing because there's towns like my town, East Brunswick. I grew up in a town called East Brunswick. It's a bluish town. A Clinton Democrat
Yeah.
town, moderate Democrat town. They haven't opted in yet. It's a kind of, so it's a little difficult. The right person probably isn't speaking to them, isn't handing them the PDFs. I'm building a media empire. I can't be everywhere talking to all the towns and all the mayors. Good people, I just say, if they're not talking to the right people, if they're not, hearing from like good applicants, if they're not hearing from their constituents about it, like I can understand why they don't have it. And it
Hmm.
is early in the process. If there is no, just go to this website and there'd be the model ordinance. Like it's difficult that way. It's a whole process because these are people like they got their own jobs, they got their own careers, there's other issues, other demanding issues like in a town. But like I am optimistic for it because cannabis can solve their perpetual money crunch. So New Jersey, the place.
There it is. Yep. And there's the thing that everyone knows but seems to forget is that we are sitting around printing money and experiencing the largest market recessions since 2008. Honestly, it's so bizarre to me that with the quantifiable billions of dollars that we could literally, not to be too pie in the sky again, we could fix so many issues almost overnight. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right, yeah, it's a big issue,
pensions
right?
going
You get the
fly,
revenue, you get the
done.
tax revenue, you get that 2% tax. It's like a thing we have. It's 2%. It's not a great amount. It's not a crazy amount, but it is like a good amount for like a lot of revenue that can feel like the issues And you have like a town like East Brunswick where people don't want to pay property taxes, but they do want good services and they do want fun things. So it's like, where do you get this money year after year? And then like healthcare is just like a booming thing, but that's another issue.
No, that for sure is, and I think this will be a more interesting topic. I think to people who live. When I say live there, not because they live there, it's because New Jersey is an interesting animal. There's a lot of, it's a right to farm state. There is a lot of big pharma
Yeah.
parks.
Yeah.
It's an interesting little industry. It has a history of mafia relations, politically, and it's a cool little vibe, man. I love getting to do this and talk to all these different people and people bringing the culture in for sure. So I appreciate it.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, New Jersey is a very interesting place. We're blue state that way. But we've always had like a lot of industry, a lot of businesses. Thomas Edison was here. Bell Labs. We got Bell Labs. We have like a lot of interesting, companies like in that fashion. For example, so it's always interesting. Like figuring out like that and like the nature of the state, right? And big pharma is a thing. That's like a lot, especially post-industrial. That was a solution.
And
So
there's a
it's a
lot
whole
of
thing.
military industrial. There's Lockheed Martin. There's um, uh, what's the
Well,
other
that's
game?
everywhere.
Ingersoll and Rand. Oh, for sure. No, no, definitely. But it's amazing that you go to a place like Paramus, right? Paramus, New Jersey, is literally like driving through a giant IKEA. You know what I mean? Like on two sides of this. So I just think, and that goes back to what we said before. I think the geography. I'm hoping states will work together. I know this is a hard thing right now to say, and we need interstate to open up. But in your political mind, like just understanding how you understand everything, applying that strategic knowledge. Am I being naive when I say that opening up interstate commerce would really help things?
It would help things. There are ways to like get disseminate knowledge. There is like a state regulators like association now. We need like a city regulating association right now too as well. That's like a big issue. So if somebody from Portland can just speak to somebody from like Hudson County and whatnot, or explain to them like how do you do this? What are the best practices? Because we have like some of these cities are setting up like their own mini CRCs way you have like in Jersey City. It is like a mini CRC, and it's
Yeah,
almost like harder to get a local approval than state approval right now. So it's just like there's a lot of interesting issues, right? But you just need to talk to people and like think about that versus people just doing like this is just one part of their job of like a busy day and like don't understand like all the nuances and the history of it.
and the bureaucracy and the very fact that these are people who are generally, I mean, government. Everyone thinks governments are efficient. Well, you know that they're not. I mean,
No, everybody I think knows that.
they
Yeah.
they never have any money. They don't have enough people. So for sure those types of things need to also be understood by the cannabis community and culture, that it is annoying. Bureaucracy sucks, but it's a reality. And
Yeah.
it's not just an anti-weed thing. It's a bureaucracy thing, frankly. But hell yeah, man, this is absolutely great. I very much look forward to the event coming up, and please, everyone, continue to check out Heady NJ. Online, you guys you have Twitter, IG. Yeah, man, let's run it up.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, go to headynj.com for the latest independent New Jersey cannabis news.
Hell yeah. All right, you got it. And this is Dan. Fucking thank you so much for this. This is really, really dope. All right. I'll see you in
Very
the city.
welcome, Jake.
Okay, man.